It started like any other flight. On that warm afternoon in June, families hugged their loved ones. Airport speakers mumbled gate announcements, and passengers filed into Air India Flight 171, a Boeing 787-8 Dreamliner bound for London Gatwick. Everything was normal. Everything was fine. The aircraft, tail number VTANB, taxied to runway 23 at Sardar, Vallabhbhai, Patel International Airport. At 13:38 Indian Standard Time, the wheels lifted from the ground. On board were 230 passengers and 12 crew members. In seat 11A sat a 28-year-old engineer named Vishwash Kumar Ramesh. In 30 seconds, the plane reached 625 feet. Then, out of nowhere, disaster struck. A sudden loss of thrust. Power gone. Pilots issued a frantic mayday. No time to react. No height to recover. The aircraft plummeted from the sky and crashed into the hostel building of BJ Medical College in Megani Nagar. 241 people on board lost their lives. 19 more perished on the ground. A total of 260 lives gone in an instant. What went wrong? Captain Sumit Sabharwal had over 8,000 hours in the air. First Officer Clive Kunder, though younger, was highly trained. The 787 is a marvel of engineering, built to handle emergencies, withstand turbulence, and remain stable on one engine. But this wasn't a one-engine failure. This was both engines failing simultaneously, something so rare, even flight simulators don't prioritize it. As alarms blared, the cockpit recorded a flurry of activity. Controls flicked, systems scanned, no response. Electrical systems shut down. Backup power failed. It was as if the aircraft had gone dead mid-air. Then the ram air turbine deployed, a tiny propeller that spins out to provide emergency power. But it wasn't enough. The Dreamliner was powerless, gliding uncontrollably. The aircraft spiraled lower, veered off course, and then violently crashed into a populated area. Within minutes, a calm afternoon turned into a nightmare. Fire, smoke, and twisted metal filled the Megani Nagar skyline. The wreckage burned for hours. Emergency teams rushed in. What they found would haunt them forever. Somehow, amid all the devastation, one man survived. His name was Vishwash Kumar Ramesh. He was found crawling out from the debris, barely scratched, covered in ash, eyes glassy, body trembling. He was alive. Emergency workers were in disbelief. As news of his survival broke, the public called it a miracle. But to Vishwash, it didn't feel like a miracle. Hours later, at the hospital, he was informed that his brother, who'd been on the college campus below, had died in the crash. His voice cracked as he whispered, "Why did I survive?" Forensic investigators later determined that the seat Vishwash occupied had been encased by part of the fuselage in a way that shielded him from the impact. It was luck, or fate, or something beyond explanation. His survival became the emotional core of the tragedy, a symbol of pain, grief, and impossible odds. He became the question no one could answer. But the biggest question remained. What caused the crash? Investigators recovered both the cockpit voice recorder and flight data recorder, which were remarkably intact. What they found was chilling. There was no sign of pilot error, no sign of turbulence. Weather was clear, runway was dry. But both engines, powerful GEnx turbines, failed at the same time. This should be impossible. Jet engines are engineered to work independently. A single failure doesn't bring down a plane. That's why airliners have two. But this was a total shutdown. No thrust, no response. The rat deployed, which only happens during complete electrical loss. All instruments went dark. The Dreamliner didn't crash because of one thing. It crashed because everything failed at once. Simulations were run, tests conducted. Could the flap setting be wrong? Number landing gear error? Not likely. All signs pointed to an event no one had planned for. And just like that, attention shifted. This wasn't just a tragic accident. Something didn't add up. Something felt intentional. Whispers started to spread. Could someone have done this on purpose? Investigators began examining the fuel. All 787s use high-grade aviation turbine fuel, stored securely and checked meticulously. But what if that fuel was contaminated? What if something toxic had been introduced during ground refueling? Experts say fuel sabotage is rare, but not impossible. A contaminant can damage both engines in minutes. And there was a red flag. The aircraft's right engine had been replaced just 3 months before the crash. That engine, brand new, failed, along with the older left engine. Why? The possibility of deliberate interference gained weight. Was this a lone saboteur? A lapse in maintenance protocol? A procedural failure that went unnoticed? Every scenario was worse than the last, because it meant this wasn't just bad luck. It meant someone, somewhere, may have helped bring this plane down. And if so, who? Why? What message were they trying to send? But beyond theories and mechanics were people, real people. On board were nationals from across the globe, 169 Indians, 53 British, 7 Portuguese, and 1 Canadian. There were newlyweds, grandparents, tourists, students, and on the ground, 19 bright, young medical students studying for exams killed as their building collapsed around them. Families received phone calls they never imagined. Some waited days for identification. The Tata Group, owner of Air India, announced 1 crore rupee compensation to every victim's family, plus additional aid to those on the ground. But no money fills the hole left by a daughter, a father, a sibling. Across India and the UK, vigils were held. Airports dimmed their lights. Photos of the deceased were framed in flowers, candles flickering in front of them. For the families, time stopped. For the world, this was a wake-up call. Not just about one crash, but about how fragile safety really is. Behind every seat number was a story that didn't get to finish. The industry couldn't ignore this. Boeing's 787 Dreamliner had enjoyed a nearly spotless safety record since its launch in 2011. But after the crash, everything changed. Public confidence dipped. Airline executives demanded answers. Boeing stock dropped. Aviation forums exploded. And as scrutiny intensified, regulators stepped in. India's Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau, the US NTSB, and British authorities all joined a massive multinational investigation. Air India immediately retired flight numbers AI-171 and AI-172 out of respect. The route is now served under new codes, AI-159 and AI-160, but even that couldn't erase the stigma. Airlines began rechecking their Dreamliners. Audit requests increased. News anchors began questioning Boeing's oversight. And the preliminary report, still pending. Due for release on July 11, 2025, it's expected to ignite further controversy. Some believe it may confirm sabotage. Others fear it'll leave too many questions unanswered. In either case, the aviation world won't be the same. Not after what happened in Ahmedabad. So now, we turn to you. Do you believe this was just a tragic accident? Or do you think something deeper was at play? Should Boeing be held responsible? Was this human error or human intent? And most importantly, what would you do if someone you loved was on that plane? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We read every one. If this story moved you, hit that like button. And if you want more stories the world needs to hear, subscribe. Because what happened on June 12th wasn't just a crash. It was a moment that changed hundreds of lives, shook an industry, and left behind a mystery we're still trying to solve.